Hey, it's Jess. Welcome back. Today I'm here with another Way Back Wednesday where I will be talking about all the books that I read in January and February of 2021. Um, and the reason I combined these 2 months is I actually read 2 books in January of 2021, but I wasn't looking at the dates right on my Goodreads. And so the first book that I finished was Queen of Shadows, and I actually talked about that last week in my last Way Back Wednesday because I thought that I'd finished it in December. So, um, yeah, I don't want to talk about that one again. Go check out my last video if you want to know about Queen of Shadows. But I didn't want to make another video with just one book because I only finished 2 books in January. And that was the longest description ever of why I made this video. The only other book that I read in January of 2021 was Outlander by Diana Gibson, and I actually ended up DNFing this book. So definitely a reason to combine 2 months because I already talked about one book and I didn't even finish one of the other books, the only other book that I read in January. I got like 50% through and realized I didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't care what happened to them. Yeah, I wasn't having a good time, so I stopped reading. I've heard great things about this series. I know a lot of people love these books. A lot of people love the show. I've never seen the show. But the book wasn't for me, and I would say I'm going to try and read it again, but I don't want to, so I won't. Moving on to February, I read 6 books in February of 2021. 5 of them were new, and 1 of them was a reread. The first book I read was Artemis Fowl by Eoin Colfer, and this is the first book in a children's series about Artemis Fowl. I don't remember why I picked this book up. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it was like for a prompt, because I was trying to do a read along, or because I wanted to watch the movie, which I still haven't seen, which I heard was horrible anyway. But for some reason I picked up Artemis Fowl. Maybe I just saw it at my library and decided to pick it up. This is about a super genius named Artemis Fowl and fairies that like try to infiltrate his house, and they're like fighting. That's what it is. It's a kid's book. It is a series. I have no idea how many books are in this series. I've never read another one. I enjoyed it okay, but obviously not enough to care to read the rest of them. So that's Artemis Fowl. The second book I read was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This was a reread for me. I reread this book. I had read it years ago. I don't remember when, but the second book, the sequel, was coming out, and so I read the first one again to get ready for that. In Ready Player One, you are following Wade Watts, and this is set in a world where, like, everyone is not everyone was poor, but Wade and his family is very poor. I believe he lives with his aunt and uncle. But there is a creation, a digital utopia called Oasis that has been created. And like that's where Wade goes to school. That's where people spend their time. They log in. They have like a virtual headset and gloves and everything. And so the creator of Oasis has passed away and has left clues for like there's some riddle thing that whoever solves it and gets the thing at the end. I can't remember. I'm sorry. It's been a long time since I've read this. Whoever solves the riddle gets like ownership of Oasis and everything like that. And even though he passed away many years ago, no one has even figured out the first clue. And then one day, Wade, who goes by Parzival, figures it out. And so it's a story, you're following him, and he kind of like goes on the run because obviously there's another company that wants to like hire him to solve the riddle because no one solved any of the riddles before, but he doesn't want to because he thinks they're the bad guys. And they kind of are the bad guys. And so it's him teaming up with other friends that he's made in Oasis, solving this riddle, hopping between different planets in the utopia. And yeah, that's what it is. It is filled with references, especially to 80s, like movies, songs, things like that. I really enjoyed this book. obviously, because I read it a second time. The movie is okay, not as good as the book, but yeah, I had a good time rereading that one. The next book I read was Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is a nonfiction book that kind of like blew up on the scene, and I listened to it as an audiobook. But it is basically about like how to create habits and to be successful in life, or like to be successful when creating new habits, you just have to be 1% better every day. So if I worked, if I walked 100 steps today, then just try to walk 102 tomorrow. So it's little changes, getting better a little bit as you go will turn into big changes in your life. I love this book. I bought it for my dad. I loaned it to a friend. It's a book that I think that everyone should read, especially if you're looking into, like, if you have a hard time creating habits and following through with things like me. This really changed the way that I think about, my daily life and everything like that. Highly recommend. He has a newsletter that comes out weekly that you can sign up for that talks about the habits. It has quotes and things like that. But James Clear, he's just kind of made an empire for himself, and he's doing good. And it's one of the best self-help books that I've read in a really long time. The next book I read was Always and Forever, Lara Jean by Jenny Han. This is the third book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy. In it, you are following Lara Jean and Peter Kavinsky. They are still dating. It is their senior year in high school, so they're talking about, they're exploring life after high school. What colleges will they go to? What are they going to be like? What is their relationship going to be like after they graduate from high school? I really like all of these books. I like all the movies. It was fun to finally wrap it up and kind of see what happened. And I thought it was a good ending for the series. I really enjoyed this one. The next book that I read was Naked in Death by J.D. Robb. And I picked this one up. I heard that J.D. Robb is a pen name for Nora Roberts, and I've never read anything by her. She usually writes like romance books, right? Kind of like Danielle Steele. In my mind, that's what she writes, and that's not the kind of books that I read. But J.D. Robb writes like crime police thrillers, and that does sound like something that I like, so I decided to pick the first one up. So in this book, it is the year 2058, and you are following Eve Dallas, who is like a police detective investigator. And there has been a murder of a senator's daughter. And so she is called onto the case to try to solve the murder. And she meets this like rich playboy named Rourke, who she finds herself falling in love with. But the problem is he is the number one suspect in the case of the murder. There's like a gajillion of these books too. I really enjoyed this one. I've read, I think the first like 4 or 5 of them. I'll talk about them in future videos, but this was definitely more up my alley than what I think Nora Roberts normally writes. And so I really enjoyed this, and I liked the character of Eve. I liked seeing her like interact with Rourke and, see the character development between the two of them. And the last book that I read was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the first book by Stephen Graham Jones that I had ever read. And in it, you are following, it has multiple point of views, but you are following this group of men who, when they were living on the reservation, they went elk hunting. But they went to an area that they weren't supposed to, and they got into some trouble. And then this takes place in the future where an entity is now like coming after them to make them pay for their crimes. It is a Native American legend, and it was really good. Again, I've said so many times in other videos, I love Stephen Graham Jones. I love his writing. It is so unique to him, so engaging, immersive. I really enjoyed this one. It took me a little while to get through because it is kind of long, but it was very creepy, very slow burn, and I like that all of his books are about his Native American heritage. And so it's just, a different type of book than I typically read. And that's usually out there. So I like hearing the Native American stories and seeing them brought into like modern day, and how can they be told as a scary story, and what would it be like for them to happen in modern day times. I just really enjoyed that. Those are all the books that I read in January and February of 2021. Pretty good reading months. Well, January wasn't, but February was a pretty good month. And I want to know, have you read any of these books? What did you think? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.